Alex Hyam, welcome to United We Are Connected podcast. Thanks very much for being here in person. I'm actually quite grateful, as I know you're quite a busy guy and you've got a lot on, and you currently live in Portugal. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Firstly, really excited to explore the world of coffee. I think it's something that's hugely blown up over, I don't know, last 10 years it seems for me. I think when I was younger, my first experience of coffee was seeing my mum and all my aunties drink coffee, which was this dried granule stuff, and it was super pungent and didn't really seem that nice. But actually, over the years now, it's just grown and it's huge. But also really excited to explore the journey that Exhale has been on. And more importantly, also how it's contributed to your health and well-being and how those journeys have connected. So if you can, for the audience listening and watching, of course, at home, if you could just give a brief overview of yourself and Exhale.
So, hello, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's good to do one in person for the first time ever. But yeah, basically, I launched Exhale about 3 years ago in the first lockdown, and we're the first coffee business in the UK that are specifically sourcing and roasting our coffee for health and performance. So previously, coffee was always sold in its quality and its taste, and there's been very little innovation in the coffee world, very little deviation from that. And then 3 years ago, we came along and totally turned the coffee world on its head and started talking about it as a healthy product. And that was based on, there's been tens of thousands of research papers, scientific studies published in coffee over decades. It's one of the most consumed drinks in the world. So because of that, it's one of the most studies. Scientists are fascinated by how it affects the human body. So there's loads of studies published on it. And I basically spent the last 7 or 8 years researching coffee and the depths of coffee. And more just the studies were just so compelling that coffee has loads of health benefits. So I was like, right, I need to launch a business in this. So that's how the idea for Excel was born.
Awesome. Yeah, it definitely has kind of really picked up its trajectory of being like a sports enhancing supplement.
Well, it always was for sports. It's been known for quite a long time. So the caffeine side of coffee, the ISSN, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, lists caffeine as an ergogenic aid to performance, and it's one of the few legal, scientifically proven performance enhancers out there. So caffeine's been known to be great for performance for quite a long time, and there's two fairly recent meta-analyses which show caffeine is linked to an 11 to 12% increase in performance, boosting performance, which is insane. But then, people have always thought of coffee as just having caffeine in it. It's just brown, lifeless caffeine water, and that's the only reason you drink coffee. But what people don't realize is coffee is actually, a coffee bean is a seed that grows inside a fruit that grows on a tree. So coffee comes from a fruit. And, we're told to eat a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle is all about eating the rainbow. The most brightly coloured foods are the healthiest. So people don't realise the coffee fruit goes through pretty much every colour of the rainbow as it ripens. It's a really vibrantly, brightly coloured fruit, just like any other. And we basically have this whole unique, overly elaborate process, which is all about retaining as much of coffee's natural fruity goodness as possible and kind of keeping out any of the nasty contaminants. So introducing people to a whole new side of coffee other than the caffeine.
And when you first came onto the scene, was it quite disruptive, what you were doing? Because I can imagine, like you mentioned, coffee was just seen as this like lifeless, caffeine, kind of pick me up. And that was it, neck a bit of coffee and then get on with your day. Or if you're feeling a bit on the slump, have a coffee and not more than that. But as you mentioned, the science of its 11% increase in performance due to caffeine, it's like this could be such a useful tool. And also now in terms of like the production of food and just as a whole, we're over processing everything and we're just losing so many nutrients. And I have kind of looked into it a little bit about coffee and the process of harvesting and how important it is to be in the right climate, the right altitude, and it's quite precise. And how they, I'm sure you'll really go into the detail of this, but how they process it from when it's been picked and when it's been de-seeded. I guess,
Depulped,
or depulped, and then fermented, and it goes through such a unique stage.
Yeah.
And I can imagine within that process is an opportunity to really maintain the nutrients and the potential health benefits. Because when you look at some of the coffee, I don't know about you, but like I mentioned, my first experience was just like this horrible tasting coffee. Well, I must have been about 12. And then I think when I went to Australia, probably just about over 10 years ago, that's when coffee really was like, whoa, this is more than just a drink. And, the art was there, and there was, I don't know, 15 different types of coffee. I think it's one of the biggest. I think Netherlands
they're years ahead of us. New Zealand as well. In fact, like a lot of the biggest specialist coffee roasteries in the UK were launched by Kiwis and Australians. But to your point, like our food system in general is just getting less and less nutrient dense and worse as things are overproduced to try and keep up with demand, but also to try and produce the biggest profit for these massive corporations. So we've our food's lost the ability to keep us healthy and well like it used to. So what we're trying to do with coffee is probably something that every food industry, every side of the food market should be doing, and a lot are, but it's instead of looking for we've got a health crisis in the UK, and instead of looking for some kind of pharmaceutical grade drug or some magical elixir from the other side of the world to solve our health issues, we're all about working with what's already in our diets, what we already have at our disposal. Like we drink coffee every day, but our goal is to produce a better version of the coffee. Because everything in our diet could be doing a lot more for us. So that's kind of our principle.
You've got the tagline, ridiculously healthy coffee. And one of your stats on your, which obviously I'm sure it's backed by the science, is that you do like 9 different
We do
lab
9
tests?
different independent lab tests, and well, actually, it's more than that. We've done 11, but
just didn't want to show
9
off.
is what we started off with, so I've stuck with 9. The number's stuck.
Well, which is great. When you're drinking something like which could have so many great benefits, it's great to know that it is being backed. Because sometimes when you go to these chain coffee shops, like some of it just tastes like terrible.
And they have no idea what's in the
and it's
coffee.
how I think when Pret first came in, it was like organic coffee. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'm quite into my food and nutrition side of things, sustainability. I think my long-term goal will go into sustainable agriculture. I think that's my journey. So I'm really interested in how food is grown, how it's produced, and pesticides, herbicides, and fungicide, like the thing, how it's sprayed, the water usage. So when the organic coffee came on the scene with Pret, I was just like, okay, this is interesting. And you always think, well, what's the other coffee? When was that produced? And I think I watched a TED Talk, which is by this guy in Bali. Must have been about 10 years ago, and he was talking about roasting it, like not roasting it too far away from its consumption point, and like roasting it and then getting it into the shops, grinding it, and then drinking it. And that was a way of maintaining its nutrients.
Definitely.
I know you've got 4 stages to creating healthy coffee, and it starts with sourcing, right? Is that correct? If you want, do you mind going through those 4 stages?
I mean,
I think that'd be really interesting.
There are probably dozens of different stages. I'd say there's probably 3 broad stages which are easy to explain. So there's the sourcing, there's the roasting, and there's the brewing. And each one of those stages has a big impact on how healthy the coffee is. So I guess first of all, what makes a coffee healthy? So coffee has caffeine in it, as we discussed, and caffeine does have a lot of research behind it as having health benefits in itself. But also coffee is full of polyphenols, which are these plant-based phytochemicals, which now more people know about. 3 years ago, people had no idea what polyphenols were. The general public didn't. So coffee is one of the predominant sources of polyphenols in our diet. So there's actually, and the main reason why polyphenols are good for us is because they're really potent antioxidants, and they also have really strong anti-inflammatory effects in the body. So polyphenols are amazing. They're in most fruits and vegetables, but you get most of them from coffee. And there's 7 different studies which show that coffee contributes 66% of your total dietary intake of antioxidants and polyphenols.
That's insane.
It's been confirmed in 7 studies.
Really?
The first one was in Norway in 2004, and it's since been backed up by 6 other studies, which are all listed on our website. No one realizes that coffee gives us so many antioxidants.
That's insane. That's an insane amount.
So each one of those stages, from sourcing to roasting to brewing, has a big impact. There's a big variability in the quantity of polyphenols in coffee, and each one of those stages magnifies the difference at the stage before. So if there's like a 3 times difference at sourcing, 3 times at roasting, and 3 times at brewing, 3 times, it's 27 times this difference. And there's actually studies which, in 2014, there was a study which tested 104 espressos bought at coffee shops in France, Germany, and Spain, I think it was. And 104 espressos, and they found a 31 times difference between the highest and lowest concentration of polyphenols in the espressos. So there's a huge variation. So we aim to standardize at every single stage, from sourcing to roasting to brewing, with lots of different ways that I can go into any of those. But yeah, it's all magnified. Each stage magnifies the differences at the last stage. So you just end up with no idea what you're drinking.
That's it. And it's quite incredible, like the difference. I think there was another study out when they tested the caffeine content of different espressos within UK chain ones. And even those were hugely different.
That last year.
Yeah, it was quite a new one. And even that, if you're trying to manage your caffeine intake, or trying to make sure you're keeping on top of it, then, and you have one from here and one from here, there's a vast difference.
Really hard, and it's really hard for athletes because the ISSN recommend 3 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilo of body weight. Okay, and that's quite a broad range already. But through trial and error, you might figure out that your optimal dose of caffeine before an event is, for me, it's 400 milligrams. But if you're drinking it just from coffee, that's untested. You have no idea whether you need to drink 2-3 coffees. Can you even drink that many coffees before an event without needing the loo at every every interval? So there's an argument. So before an event, I'll have one of our coffees, which I know is 200 milligrams of caffeine, and then I supplement with 200 milligrams extra of caffeine from pills.
Oh, really? So so is that just before
so
what, caffeine, like a not a physical event?
So if I'm doing I do a lot of ultra running or Ironman or whatever it is, 400 milligrams is my sweet spot. Really? So
just before.
Yeah, well, an hour. So it takes about an hour to 90 minutes for the caffeine from coffee to get into your system, to get metabolized. So about an hour to 90 minutes before, I'll have a coffee. And a coffee brewed in a small cafetiere, so a mug of coffee, is 200 milligrams of our coffee. And that's just enough time. And then about 15 minutes before the event, I'll have 200 milligrams of caffeine in pill supplement form, because when you take it in pill, it's a lot quicker to get into your system. So by the time I'm starting the race, I'm starting fully loaded with caffeine.
Will you then have anything as you go through, or will that be more like glucose, kind of sugar based?
So as I go through, it depends on the race. Like if it's a 100-mile, 27-hour race, I'll try and avoid too much glucose and fuel on the more kind of starchy carbs. But the caffeine in the race, I'll save for when I really need it. It's in shorter distance races, any race, it's amazing for like an hour, maybe an hour before the end of the race. Start thinking, could I do with a bit of a lift to carry me through the last hour? And it's a real like secret weapon at the end of a race, definitely. Yeah,
I can imagine. I mean, I'm as I mentioned earlier, I'm looking to do my first ultra. I mean, I did a 20k trail run down the Jurassic Coast with Mavericks, which was really cool, wicked. But I mean, I trained for it pretty well, and I did well in the race, and I really enjoyed it. But I was like, if I did a 5k more, like I'd be hurt. So I'm really looking forward to doing the ultra, but really thinking about that preparation, and interested to see how I can use caffeine as along that journey to help.
Definitely, and don't rush the training as well. Just slowly build up. There's no rush to get to an ultra. It took me years of building up. Yeah, like, really.
I mean, that's why I'm not going to because I'm a bit heavy, and my knees, I got old rugby knees and ankles, so it's like just going to try and let the body naturally build, or get used to that increase in intensity. But I'm looking forward to it. We actually signed up to another one. I don't know if you heard it, Tenacious 10 Hours in Wales.
No, never heard of it.
I don't know why. Do you know what? This year I was just like, I work within fitness. Could do CrossFit, F45 coaching.
Nice.
But I was just like, I really want to do something different this year. And I know a lot of people doing running. It seems like everyone's doing running now these days. Yeah. And,
ultra running. Everyone wants to do ultra running. It's so trendy.
Yeah, it is. But now it's like, 2 marathons in 2 days or 5 a day, whatever. Not 5 a day, but I'm really looking forward to getting out a bit more nature based, getting out. And one of the guys actually I was talking to the other day, he was training to swim the channel. I was like, that would be sick. Pretty tough, but
so that was my goal before lockdown.
Really?
And every year I was building up the distances for the swimming. So I got to a 14k Thames Marathon swim. And then the next thing I wanted to do was Windermere, Windermere end to end, and then the next step after that is the channel. But then lockdown happened and swimming pools closed, and I lived in London, and it just became really hard to train. So that's when I switched to the running and ultra running. I was like, right, how far can I push the running? Which was the only thing I could do in lockdown in London.
Where were you? Run. Yeah, that's what everyone did. Where were you training for your swimming in London, or did you go to?
Well, actually, I live near a reservoir. I was quite lucky. In Stoke Newington, there's a reservoir, and there's a 750-meter loop around this West Reservoir, and it's the most crystal clear, stunning water with swans and everything in it. It's like amazing. So did a lot of swimming there.
Yeah, I went to the Lake District a few years ago, and I was like, be wicked to swim. Do like a little swim, run. Yeah. It's a bit crazy, but a bit fun, just camping out as well, do some camping on the way. So with your coffee,
back to coffee.
Yes. How is it, tell us about the difference, the key differences between, say, your coffee and a standard coffee that you'd buy in a supermarket. Because I think that's, a lot of people are just used to picking off the shelf. They know what they like. You've got Robusta and Arabica. They're the two main blends, right?
They're the two main types of bean. I guess just at the basic principles of what you're going to be buying, if you're buying like a typical supermarket coffee versus ours. So there's 3 big differences, 3 big obvious differences. So ours is organic coffee, ours is specialty grade coffee, and ours is fresh roasted coffee. So I'd say even if someone doesn't buy our coffee, I would say go for those 3. So organic coffee, which we touched on before, is much better for the environment, much better for the planet, and also there's a lot of research emerging now that organically produced crops have high levels of antioxidants and polyphenols and things, so it's healthier. That's a whole different topic which we can go into, but so organic coffee, then specialty grade coffee. So specialty grade coffee is something that's dictated by the Specialty Coffee Association, and they assess coffees from around the globe based on quality, and they have to meet really strict taste criteria. So they're assessed out of 100 on this scale. They have to score over 80 out of 100 to be specialty coffee. But specialty coffees, you can pretty much guarantee that everyone in the supply chain is treated fairly. Like the farmers are paid an amazing price, much higher than the fair trade price for coffee. And the coffees are just the beans at the plantations are looked after, the plants are looked after really well. We visited plantations where they don't even let the staff, the pickers, wear aftershave because they're worried it might impact the coffee cherries. Wow. So specialty coffees are really well looked after, really high quality, and everybody's looked after that's involved with it. And then fresh roasted coffee, which you touched on before as well. So fresh roasted coffee. So coffee is at its healthiest when it's freshest, and as soon from the moment it's roasted, its healthy compounds start degrading. Its taste starts deteriorating as well, but its healthy compounds as well start degrading. And then as soon as you grind coffee as well, that rate of degradation accelerates.
Probably oxygen get into it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's oxygen that stales coffee. And if you grind coffee, it has a massively larger surface area than if you keep coffee beans. So there's a massive surface area open to oxygen, which means that it just stales much faster. So the best thing to do is buy fresh roasted coffee and grind it fresh at home yourself, and then you're getting the healthiest possible coffee that tastes the best.
And what about the roasting? If because I don't know when you get coffee. For me, I buy grounded coffee already, organic. But I don't know when it was ground, when it was roasted. Is there a cut-off point, like a week, and then it's like you're basically just getting the caffeine? Because I guess
it depends on so many things. Yeah. It depends on so many factors. But we've done some testing and we've read the research as well. And coffee, it's a slow process. There's no like real cut-off point in terms of time. But after 6 weeks, coffee that's just left in its pouch loses 12% of its polyphenols after 6 weeks. We have recently started offering these airtight coffee storage containers, and we tested those. And coffee kept in those for 6 weeks only lost 2% of its polyphenols.
So is that 12%. Ones at home?
Yeah, so we sell them, you can buy them at home, store your coffee in one of those. It sucks the air out, or most of the air. So it's in a relatively oxygen-free environment. And because there's much less oxygen in there, it keeps the coffee fresher for longer. And it's a 12% versus a 2% drop-off, which is huge. So there's a lot you can do at home to help it. But yeah, look, that's versus a supermarket coffee, organic, specialty grade, fresh roasted, fresh ground coffee. They're the three biggest. And then aside from that, the obvious ones are, we do all of the lab testing. So our coffee is, especially high in polyphenols and antioxidants, and it's also tested free from mycotoxins, pesticides, heavy metals, molds, yeasts, and coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed food crops in the world, if not the most heavily sprayed food crop with pesticides. So it is an issue. These things are an issue. So we test to be free from all of those.
It's huge. I mean, the science, there's a lot of science behind, crops that are being sprayed and the impacts that it can have on human health, but also the environment. So what they're doing is to spray and to kill any insects, any potential.
And the pickers and people working on the farms as well. But also, the environment there, but also the quality of the soil. So if they're using pesticides, the soil will be, it doesn't just kill pests, it kills the bacteria and microbes in the soil. So you'll have microbially dead soil. And plants grown in these, in soil with no microbes, there's much fewer nutrients for the plants in the soil. So you'll get weaker plants. Then weaker plants will have less of the healthy compounds in. And then it stems over to the next stage of coffee's life. So I said there's loads of sub stages. So within the sourcing stage, there's the plants, and you harvest the coffee cherries from the plants, and then you have to ferment the coffee cherries. So you have to remove that mucilage off the coffee bean, and that's a fermentation process. So coffee is one of the most fermented foods in the world. Sorry, the most fermented food in the world. No one realizes that.
Yeah, I do. I read that as well. And obviously fermented food and gut health is really kind of kicking off now as well.
It's huge.
It's like this coffee is like this, almost like an elixir of life, but that no one's really utilizing in the correct way.
Well, science is there. Scientists are there. In 2017, the British Medical Journal published this umbrella review on looking at 213 meta-analyses on coffee, 213 meta-analyses, and they concluded that coffee was good for pretty much anything, unless you're pregnant. And their headline was, "Scientists wake up to the health benefits of coffee." Wow. So science is there, but just the general public is a bit slower to catch up.
Yeah, and I wonder why it's like, are a lot of the chain coffee companies now trying to improve their coffee because they know you've got these more independent brands which are coming out, and independent coffee shops which are bringing up coffee or selling coffee which is far better for the environment, better for the people, better tasting, but also there's a lot of different blends now coming out of CBD coffee, coffee with butter, and whatever else. Do you see that? Do you think that the chains are gonna kind of catch on to this and try and adapt theirs
it's hard for them. I do often wonder what they make of us. I do often wonder what they think of us and what we're doing. I'd say we're probably pissing a few of them off, but yeah, I think it's hard because they have such massive quantities of coffee. Things are moving, like the demand for organic coffee and organic produce is growing so quickly that they'll have to change to keep up. But I can't quite see how like a Starbucks would do it on such a huge scale.
It's huge. It'd be interesting to know. I did try and do a bit of research to find out, more about the finer details of where coffee from these larger chains come from. But I think a lot of it is lost, especially on that fair trade side of things. Because I did watch one on cacao, and where they say it's sourced from an area that is where the people are looked after, but this is just one hub basically near the shipping port. But they then are branched out to all these smaller areas where there's child labor, environmental impact, and it's like it's hard to get to the root of certain things, but it's great to have brands like yourself come out and really try and impact or change the way that coffee is used and utilized, especially for well-being. And I know you mentioned previously that on your own journey of health and how coffee has impacted that. Do you want to share a little bit about your more physical journey?
Yeah, very happy to. So, Exhale was basically born out of my own health struggles and my own health battles, as most health-related businesses probably are. I'd say there's probably a story of some kind of pain and suffering behind every.
Sure.
But basically, about 10 years ago, so I'm 40 now, and in my 20s, I had a wonderful time. I did everything you're meant to do in your 20s, and I had a lot of fun, and used and abused London for everything it had to offer.
Yeah.
And then by the time I hit 30, I started kind of paying the price, and my health just utterly crumbled. And I just started getting every symptom, everything went wrong, from my stomach to the brain fog. I got MCAS, I got spontaneous angioedemas, I started developing rheumatoid arthritis and an autoimmune condition of some kind. So, and basically it was in and out of every hospital across London, looking for answers, and just didn't really find any answers. I just kept getting told like fancy Latin names to describe a symptom, but nothing really looking at the cause or nothing connecting the symptoms, like nothing at all. And I'd be prescribed everything from the rheumatoid arthritis drugs, can't remember what they're called, statins, steroids. Like I didn't take any of them, but I was prescribed all of these things. And then I started researching health and trying to figure out for myself what it was that was causing it. And I started seeing a functional medicine practitioner who now actually works in Exhale.
Cool.
He's a bit of a legend. And again, he had loads of tests again, and he just kept coming back with loads of things. Everything tested positive, from SIBO to this virus to this bacteria to this and that. So I had everything, but still I was taking all of these herbal remedies. So I swapped pharmaceuticals for herbal remedies, and I took everything, and nothing helped still. And things kind of helped, but didn't really help. And I guess the Exhale was part of that journey, and it was part of me learning and reading the science. And I just kept hearing more and more about how coffee was healthy. But at the same time, I was learning, trying to understand my own health and applying a lot of the principles I was learning about health and wellness and how to be healthy, and applying that to Exhale as a business. But yeah, I guess it's just it was a long, really painful journey. Really painful.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I think you're right. Like a lot of businesses and stories come from a bit of pain and hardship along the way, and it kind of gives you a bit of a realization of what we can do to look after our bodies, how important it is, especially for longevity. I think, like you said, when you're in your 20s, you're just going here, going there, partying, festivals. But, trying to find ways. And I think that's what, as a brand United, we're always trying to find ways in which we can improve ourselves, make sure we're healthy first, but also try and protect the planet at the same time, because the planet is our playground, basically. And that's what we want to do.
Healthy you can't exist without a healthy planet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my favourite phrase that I've heard.
Yeah, and I think even, when we go into nature, there's something about it. When you go out into nature, when you're in the oceans, rivers and seas, and you're going for a swim, or you're going out running in a park, these environments are so, integral to our well-being. And I think sometimes we lose that connection, and we lose what
that's
really
what I've learned over the last however many years. I've tried every diet, I've tried every supplement, I've tried everything that you could possibly imagine, and I followed every guru and every kind of snake oil, false idol. I followed it all. I tried it all. Loved every fad. Love a good fad. And I've just realized now that actually, none of it really is needed or necessary, and you just need to have a really balanced approach to health and life and wellness. And now I'm back to eating everything. I actually I'd say I definitely had an eating disorder. I was afraid of most foods that they would cause some kind of symptom, and I cut everything out of my diet. And I was so paranoid about eating out or going and visiting friends, because I would have some kind of flare up, or I'd wake up in the morning with a massive swelling on the side of my face, and it's just intense. I had so much time off work, and I was a terrible parent because of it, and it's all the brain fog. But now I eat everything again, and I've basically realized that actually to be healthy, it's all the things that you don't need to add anything more into your diet or buy any fancy tech or any fancy supplements and stuff. It's just working with what we have already. And it's like, it's just the classic things. It's just spending more time in nature, spending more time with friends, just getting a bit of sunlight. I have a really dialed in morning routine now, and I get up in the morning and I have this great morning routine where I get some sunlight in the morning and I do a bit of a peaceful kind of practice of some kind, some breath work, something like that, some exercise, a bit of heavy lifting, all the classics, all the things that you can't really commercialize but they're free to do, and they're the things that make you healthy. You're looking for a sense of fulfillment in life. I was an accountant before, deeply unfulfilled. Now I'm doing a business that massively fulfills me. So it naturally would follow that my health, my mental health and physical health would follow as well. So
mate, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like it's not looking for these external factors to try and make you a better person or improve your health. It's like, it's already there within you. And it's, if you give, I always think the body's such an amazing, thing that if you just look after it, you give it some good movement, you hydrate it, you get some sunshine, it will naturally shine for you. But I think sometimes we're just overloading it with external stressors, environmental stressors, and it's trying to be really smart. I think people have got to be really cautious with how the environments that they do get into on the regular basis and how these do impact their overall health and well-being. But I think it's super simple. Yeah.
Just overcomplicate it all. We overcomplicate what we put in our bodies, and we overcomplicate the things we do to try and be healthy. And I've gone from 5 years ago thinking that every event I was entering, I had to pull out of because I was too old to even train for it. Never mind enter it. I just couldn't do anything, and I was like, oh my god, is this it? I'd always taken my fitness as for granted, assuming I'd be able to keep on doing these things. And I was like, oh my god, I was in my mid-30s, and I was like, is it game over for me from here on out? And then managed to turn things around, and now I'm focused on, I'm 40, and I want to have another 40 years of adventures, of ultra endurance sports. And I now get inspiration from people who run 200-mile ultra marathons when they're 81, and I'm like, right, I want 40 more years of that. And I know it's within reach, and I know it's perfectly doable. So
I think you can, it's certainly reachable for everyone as long as they look after it. And I don't know, sometimes you get caught in that London bubble where it's just all go, 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 and going out for drinks on the regs. But I mean, that's something I've kind of really reduced. Not that I drank a lot anyway, but I just thought, there's no science saying anything good about alcohol. But also, not even if there was, it's how I feel after it, Like, I think at the point where I am now, 2 years ago, I decided to go to university to study environment and sustainability. That was my passion. And you mentioned it earlier about being fulfilled. My goal as an individual was to find ways to protect the planet. I'm so passionate about that. And I've tried different avenues and pivoted here and there and just, thought, okay, how can I gauge it? And then I thought, what, the best, why not go to university and study it and learn and find a way where I can get into the sector and really try and inspire some change. I'm always working in fitness. You always try and inspire people to look after their health and move more. So I thought, well, if I can inspire people, and that's when we created United We Are, because I was like, I love sports. I've played rugby for 15 years. I've traveled around the world to play. I've done different run events and different activities which are nature-based. And I was like, the sports community is such a powerful and influential community. I was like, if I can get people to be care for or interested in protecting their sports environments, like I mentioned, the oceans, rivers, and seas, the pollution that goes out into our rivers and our oceans, we can, which impact the biodiversity, but also the health of those swimming in there, or the air that we're running through when we're going for a run. These are really important for our sports. And our sporting events, we're seeing incredible temperatures now in some events, whether it's the Australian Open and wildfires cancelling games. I think there was a rugby team in Australia that had to move their training to a different location because the wildfires are, I'm not saying that, wildfires are, they're a part of the natural system, but the intensity and the regimes now are just off the scale. So it's like, if I can get people interested in protecting their sports, then naturally it's going to protect the environment. And I think naturally that people can connect with that,
I think that's fantastic. Like there's so we were just at the National Running Show at the weekend.
Yeah, I saw.
Did you? Yeah, and we were part of the Green Zone. So it's the first time ever in the National Running Show there's been a running greener zone, and there's loads of amazing brands there. Like you should look up some of them who are just doing.
See Hilo?
Hilo, I wasn't there personally, but I presume Hilo were probably there. I imagine they're definitely there. Yeah.
Michael's a really cool guy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get him on the podcast, so if he's listening.
I'm sure he will do.
He did mention he will come on, but he's super busy, and I know he's doing his thing. I know everyone's doing their thing, but what they're doing within running is awesome, and running like the world depends on it is just such a cool thing.
There's so many good brands, but it's even the real simple things. Like there was a couple of different running trainer related brands and called pair ups, and it's all about not like, as runners we buy far too many new pairs of trainers, and it's really simple things like just don't replace your trainers as often, like fix them, repair your trainers. And it's just made me think about the simple things, and don't always take a t-shirt at the finish line of an event, like trees not teas, you know?
I saw that.
These little simple changes, and you don't have to do any big grand gestures, just like the little simple things.
I think we were my brother, who's co-founder, he's also works as a part-time barista as well, so he's going to enjoy this podcast, Rory. We were talking about the brand, and as we sell our own t-shirts now, we do a print order as well as hold some minor stock, but our goal is to be a multi-brand e-com site where people can come and buy any sports and activewear, but that is sustainable, kind of like a JD, but everything's sustainable. And he mentioned about offering a service where we repair t-shirts. They come in, we can do a little repair on it, and then they can keep it. But and I think that we're trying to. It's a weird kind of dynamic that we're in. We're trying not to promote consumerism, but we're trying to get people more aware of purchasing organic. Like our clothes are organic cotton, tested for harmful chemicals, printed using non-toxic inks, fair wear, vegan approved, and things like that. And these are all like a combination of things which just creates a better product. And but if people can, like, I try and wear things to death. I've had training tops that are just like so old, and my missus is like, you got to get rid of this, stinks. I'm like, it looks good, and I got to still use it. I'm only going to sweat in it.
You should look into, Patagonia. Have you heard about their like repair and repair? Everything that you buy from Patagonia has like a lifetime repair guarantee. That's amazing. It's amazing.
Actually, my missus bought me a Patagonia top for Christmas, so I was like, I just want something that I could keep forever. And so that another great brand, Passenger. I love Passenger. Really cool. I like. So I got some of their bits, and I just love it. But we actually went to the Blue Earth Summit. Have you heard of Blue Earth Summit down in Bristol?
I heard of it, but I didn't.
Patagonia were there, and they had like this little sewing area, and they were just like patching stuff up. And it did have a little patch on it that might have been a different color, but I think that adds to the character of the top. It's got life. So tell me about your morning. Tell me about that morning routine. I'm interested in knowing a bit about that, and how does Exhale Coffee come into that?
Morning routine. So, I guess just taking it a step back a little to explain why it's been so beneficial. Like when I launched the business, so it was quite a tough initial couple of years launching the business. It
was just before lockdown, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I quit work in February 2020. And 3 weeks later, lockdown number 1 happened, and I quit work to launch the coffee business. And then the lockdown happened, and our warehouse move and our roastery plans fell through, basically. And it took me about another 8 months to repivot the business and resculpt the business into what it is today to launch in October. So we launched in October 2020, but it was basically back-to-back lockdowns, and the whole world was in turmoil. And to launch a business in the middle of all of that was so intensely stressful. And for the next year and a half, it broke me physically, mentally, and in every single way. Like all of my issues, all of my symptoms and physical symptoms just went off the chart, and I literally felt like I was dying from the inside out. Like every part of me, my fingers looked like they had rigor mortis because the rheumatoid arthritis was so bad that I couldn't move my fingers, and they looked like they were dead, Correct. And it was so bad. And then that was about a year and a half in, and then it was March 2022 when a friend of mine, a guy called Mark White, who you should definitely get on this podcast, great guy. He has a business he has Run Grateful. Get him on to talk about that. And he also had a business called Hormesis, which is an app which was around supporting men's mental health.
Cool, yeah.
And it was about adding 15 minutes into your day of a move, connect, and reflect. So 5 minutes move, 5 minute connect, 5 minutes reflect.
I like that.
So he asked me to be part of their pilot in March 2022 for a month, and to do this move, connect, reflect every day for a month, and then they'd interview me and stuff about it. But I started doing it in the mornings, and I was like, okay, I'll just do it in the morning. That was the only time, because as soon as I start work, I couldn't stop. And I would work all night, all day and all night, couldn't look up from my computer. So I was like, I'll do it in the mornings, because before I start work. So I started doing that initially, and then it started building from there, and it built from there into, it became a really elaborate 2-hour morning routine, because I was just like, right, I'll add this in, I'll add that in, I'll add this in. And I was in central London then, and I had a tiny little back garden, so I'd go out in my back garden, and I was adding loads of funky stuff into it, but then equally at the same time, I lived next to this old Indian couple. And like, I'd be in the back garden doing my morning routine, and this old Indian lady next door would be in the back garden doing her morning routine, and
cool.
She'd have bells and incense and all this kind of stuff, and doing chants, and like me and her would compare notes. So I'd start doing some of her stuff, and vice versa.
That's wicked.
Anyway, so I've basically over the years I've kind of tempered it. So now I get up at 6 every day, and the kids wake up at 8. So I have 2 little kids, or I'm on duty from 8. So from 6 till 8 is my time. And I basically, sometimes I'll go for a run, sometimes to the gym, but I start with half a litre of water with some electrolytes in. Like, everyone should start with some water, hydrate after the night. And then I'll do like 15 minutes of dynamic warm-ups, just to very gently wake up the body. Yeah. And then I'll probably do 5 to 10 minutes of shadow boxing, just to get the heart rate up. And then I'll do some kind of strength work, whether it's a gym session or whether it's this thing called the Big Three, which is good for bad backs and all this.
Big Three stretches,
Big Three.
Is it?
Three exercises that this guy Stuart McGill, who's the back medic, he thinks everyone should do it to keep a healthy back.
Yeah, let the people know. Go on, what's the Big Three?
So the Big Three, and this guy Stuart McGill is like the world's leading expert on backs, and really? I injured my back in 2019 deadlifting, and something popped, and I was just on the floor for weeks, classic. And then after that, it just never quite recovered. But now, if I keep up the Big Three, it keeps my back strong and healthy and fit and strong enough to never have issues on ultra endurance events. Big Three are, there's a type of modified stomach crunch that he does, is a side plank, and then there's bird dogs. Really simple exercises, super simple, but just do them kind of 4 or 5 times a week, and you'll keep a strong back. And he has a specific way of doing them that you should look up.
Okay.
But anyway, do the Big Three, I'll like 4 or 5 times a week, and then I have my first coffee probably at about 8 o'clock. So after my morning routine, and after I've gone on a run, and after I've been to the gym. And that's purely because if I grind beans in the morning, it'll wake the kids and the wife up. So,
that's no chance before.
That's the only reason. But yeah, and then I do some breath work. So I use a breath work app called Othership. I don't know if you've come across that at all.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I'm obviously quite aware of the Wim Hof. And
he's quite intense.
Yeah, he has a 16-minute one on YouTube, and I just follow it.
Okay.
It's about 20 deep breaths in and out. You just take, and then you hold, and then you release, and hold, and then you go back into it 3 times, and then he does say if you want to keep going longer, just go longer. Sometimes I've gone over 2 minutes just like being totally fine. I'm like, it's weird. I'm how am I? And you feel completely relaxed.
So Wim Hof's amazing. Like, I did it for like 3 years. I did the Wim Hof technique with the cold showers and all of that, and swore by it. But now I use this app called Othership, which is breath work, and it's spawned out of like California or somewhere. It's very cool, very funky, and it's breath work to music. And the people who the guides, the breathwork guides, are really fun and engaging. There's this one guy called Harry, and you'll do it, and there's hundreds of different ones that you can choose from. So it's really fun choosing different ones depending on your mood, like up-regulating, down-regulating, and some of them you're just left like buzzing. Really? It's absolutely elated afterwards. So
when I've done it before, I feel like tingling, like energy going through me. We have been doing a bit of the cold water therapy. Go to Parliament Hill Lido.
Nice.
Gets pretty fresh out then. But the great thing is they got the sauna there. Like I'm trying to guess it's like almost that biohacking kind of vibes going on. Everyone's trying to biohack in a way, but I've really been enjoying that. And usually I do get like a little bit run down over Christmas, just like you just kind of ramping up everything just before you go away for Christmas or whatever. But this year I felt pretty good, and I've been doing a lot more cold and saunas, and I just like, but also building that resilience and talking about, like you mentioned about mental health earlier. We did a little two of the guys who've been on the podcast before, they did the Move for Muddy, where they just, for the month of November, rather than like just talking about mental health, they were trying to get people to move for mental health. And we did a little training day with them when we went to do some cold water and just try and build some mental resilience. You know, when you got to get in that water, it's a bit of an anxious moment. Just I like to dive straight in, like not slowly low. I'm just like, I'm getting in. Yeah, I've got no choice but to swim after that. And like I remember when I first dove in, boom, dive in, and I'm pretty much straight out and like I'm like so cold. But then diving in now, swim in a length, get out. Let my body naturally adapt to it and let body kind of respond to the stress that I've just put it through. And I've really enjoyed it. You know,
they reckon that it doesn't actually need to be that cold to get the health benefits. It's only like 14, 15 degrees it has to be, and you only need 2 minutes in the water to get the health benefits. But people have taken cold water to the extreme, and I was massively guilty of it. Like after the cold showers, I then progressed to buy an ice bath for our garden. And every day I'd have a 5-minute cold ice bath in like the single figures, like temperature wise.
I was close to getting one recently.
But I did it too much. And as someone with an autoimmune condition, you have to really aware and conscious of all the stresses you're putting on your body, because everything's a stress, and cold water is a massive stress. Even coffee has a stress. But all of these stresses through hormesis make your body stronger. But if you have too many of them and too intense stresses when you're not quite ready for it, and especially if your stress tolerance is lower at the time from having little kids, you're not sleeping as well, or you've launched a business and you're really stressed. So one thing that I've learned as well in the last 5 years is to be mindful of the total stress that I'm putting on my body from every different source. And if I'm, say, ramping up the training for an ultra marathon, that's a massive stress on the body as well. I'll dial down stress everywhere 100%. Else I can in my life. So I can cope better with the ultra running. And I didn't know that before, and I thought, right, I'm training harder for the ultra run, so I need to do more ice baths, because that's going to help me boost my immune system. Well, it's not if you're really stressed. Ice bath's not going to boost your immune system, it'll crush it. So
you're so right. And that's something that I've really been mindful of recently, especially now going to uni, doing a degree, starting up a business, trying to, take part in marathons and ultra marathons and functional fitness competitions. Recently got married. You've got these different levels of not stress. The marriage is not stressful.
Wait till you have kids. It's a whole different level.
But you know what I mean? There's expectation now. There's I don't know. So, and there are levels of stress. And I remember one of my mates years ago, he was at the Academy of London Wasps. And they had a strength conditioning coach, and they'd test their stress levels to see how stressed they were based on previous physical tests. But they'd also get them to talk about or mention what emotional stresses that they're dealing with, because these all impact the body in the same way. And depending on the emotional stress, it will dictate how they can deal with the physical stress as well. I think sometimes, if you're layering on new stressors, of course there might be good outcomes of these stressors, but it's still a stress nevertheless. Then we need to be mindful of we might have to take from this to allow that to go up, and that way you can actually manage it rather than. And I think sometimes you can only
reap the benefits of a particular stress if you can react to it in the right way.
And otherwise you're just going to lead to burnout, And it's okay sometimes, if I've had a long coaching day, then I might not train that day or use it as my off day and just relax and try and focus on just.
Have you spoke much about something called Hormesis on this show?
No, not really.
It's really interesting. That's the kind of scientific name for.
I read it on. I think you did a blog. I read some of your blog. You're a great blog writer, by the way.
Thank you.
You debunked something on there, which
probably.
Which is really interesting. But talk.
So Hormesis is that process. It's basically kind of what doesn't kill you will only make you stronger, and it's like if you put small amounts of stress on your body reacts to that stress by getting stronger and more resilient to that stress and other stresses. So cold water, for example, is a stress, and then you react by getting stronger. Exercise is a stress on the body. If you exercise, your body reacts to get better at exercise, fitter, stronger, whatever it is. And coffee is caffeine is a stress on the brain. Potentially that was probably the one that you read about coffee and brain health.
It was.
And there's some people that are mentioned in that particular blog who claim that caffeine restricts the blood flow the blood flow in the brain, so is bad for brain health. But actually, that I argued has a hormetic response in the brain, and actually your brain responds and becomes stronger, which is why drinking coffee is linked to a massive reduction in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other cognitive conditions because of the hormetic effect of caffeine. And then there's another thing. So that Hormesis applies to everything throughout nature, not just people. So plants, when plants are under stress, so coffee plants, for example, and this is another really fascinating recent line of research I've been looking into, and it's how different stresses affect the coffee plant. And stresses are categorized as these two types of stress: is biotic stress and abiotic stress. So biotic stress is from life. It's from bacteria, from yeast, from pests. So it's from living organisms. So a coffee plant will have, on an organic farm, will have lots of pests attacking it. So that's biotic stress. And those pests cause the plant to release more chlorogenic acid, which is a natural pesticide in the plant. And it's been shown in studies, and Dr. William Lee's done a lot on this as well, which is that a coffee that is grown on an organic farm that's been attacked by more pests is higher in chlorogenic acid. So you're drinking a coffee that's higher in chlorogenic acid, so it's healthier for you. So you're benefiting through the plant's hormesis, and they call that xenohormesis. Right. So if you stress the food that you're eating, then you're going to get a benefit from that stress that's put on your food through xenohormesis, which is like next
And then
level.
naturally people would, if they on a non-organic farm, they would just spray that, get rid of the pest.
And there's no pests.
Yeah.
And there's no bacteria in the soil, and that's another,
it's that's what I'm really going to get into in terms of my careers, as looking after our soils. It's so important. There's a great organisation, Save Our Soils, which talk about the importance of our soil and fertility, and the mycelium within the soil, which helps create a super biodiverse, healthy soil is important for the planet. We have no
soil
soil
as a microbiome, like we do. So.
It's so complex, and we're just absolutely hammering it with pesticides.
You need to look up Zach Bush. Have you come across him?
Zach Bush. I think so.
He talks a lot about soil health.
Is it Zach Bosch, MD?
Yeah. Listen to interviews with him. It is on a different level.
I've been listening quite a few bits, and before because we've got a few minutes left, quick one for coffee: do's and don'ts. Top list of do's and don'ts for coffee, from the perspective of Exhale and yourself.
Do's and don'ts for coffee. This is a really interesting question, because one thing that we try not to do too much of as a business is, because of my own health journey, I've been told so much that you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't do this, don't eat grains, don't eat meat, don't eat this, and everyone's pushing their own kind of dogmatic beliefs on you based on their own commercial interests, or maybe based on cherry picking one or two scientific papers.
Yeah, for sure.
And what we try hard not to do is to try and dispel the myths and try not to push it. So it's kind of, okay, here's what you should do: follow your own body, listen to your own body, your own biology. So many people say things like, don't drink coffee after lunch because it'll disrupt your sleep. My dad's 84, he's going strong, he's physically fit, and he's as alert as I am. He's 84, and he drinks coffee right up until before he goes to bed. Yeah. And if he wakes up in the night, he'll come downstairs, have a double espresso, then go back to bed.
No way.
So who am I to tell him? I was like,
that's perfect, man. I think, listen to your own body. Your body knows what's best, and you know what's best if you actually tune into what's going on and what you're putting into it.
Exactly. And it's things like everyone at the minute is talking about delaying your first cup of coffee until 90 minutes after you wake up. I don't know if you've heard that one.
Dr.
Huberman's a big fan of that. And it's like, all of these are tactics to employ if you have an issue. If you can't sleep at night, then don't drink coffee so late in the day. Okay, but only if you can't sleep at night. If you have a caffeine crash in the morning, then maybe do delay your first coffee till 90 minutes. But if you wake up first thing in the morning, like I used to do, and have a double espresso, and you feel totally fine because you're so habituated to caffeine, you don't have the crash, then don't bother trying to change that. Don't change it. If it isn't broke, don't try and fix it.
Yeah,
So.
mate, perfect advice. I love it. So in terms of Exhale now for 2024, actually I got we've got 5 minutes. In terms of 2024 moving forwards, what's the plan for Exhale? What you're up to? Is there anything that anyone can get involved in? Where can they go to find out more information?
So for 2024, a big thing is I really wanted to launch the business having a positive impact on people's lives. Like a really launching the business, I wanted it to be different to all of the FTSE 100s had done before, which is just purely about profits and revenues and everything. And you know, initially launched it with that big goal in mind, and I wasn't sure exactly in what way, but I wanted it to have some kind of positive impact on everyone in our supply chain, from our customers to everyone. And then it was about kind of 9 months into the business that, because it's so hard launching a business and it's so tough, and especially we were making such a big loss at the beginning, that I was so stressed about it, and I had a huge meltdown, and I was just like, God, all I'm focused on is just trying to grow the revenues of the business, and I'm not doing any good, and I'm not connected with that side of why I launched the business. And it took me about a year to make peace with that and understand that. And I realized that, you know, in the early days, you kind of you can't help anyone if you don't have a financially stable business. Like we had zero cash, we were hemorrhaging cash, we were making massive losses, and we couldn't afford to pay our staff, couldn't afford to pay our own salaries. And we just couldn't. And it was really hard for me, because I was like, I really want to be doing more for the community and socially and environmentally, and having a more tangible, positive impact. But at the same time, I couldn't afford to pay ourselves, so I couldn't. So it took me about a year then to make peace with that. And now we're getting to the point where we are washing our face as a business. The business is growing really quickly, which is amazing. And now it's like, right, we have a financially stable business. We actually have a huge email list. We have like 60,000 people in our weekly newsletter. Incredible. And over 50% open rates, and it's really engaged. And it's like, okay, we now have a good business. Now, how can we start coming good on my original promises, my original dreams, which is to have more of a positive social impact? So 2024 is about figuring out how we can do that. And I've got some great ideas, and I'm starting to work with this amazing agency who should hopefully help us realize that. But that's what this year's about. Yeah,
awesome. So. Well, I'm sure we'll look forward to seeing what happens with that. And if anyone wants any information, they can go to your website. You've got loads of science on there, which I looked through. You've got a great, really well put together actually website. You know, there's heaps of information. You've got all the backed science for it. Before we go, I thought I'd get your last thoughts on this. We're actually doing a podcast on Thursday, which is, you know, new year, new me kind of vibes. And the goal is not to, you know, new year, new me. People are always trying to make a difference to the health. But I think for someone like yourself and the journey you've been on, it's like, and you might have mentioned it, bits and bobs here. But what's your advice for anyone who's looking to make some positive change going forwards into 2024 in any area?
I'd say simplify health and wellness. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it, and just apply the basic principles of only put natural things in your body. Avoid anything artificial, any artificial sweeteners, any artificial emulsifiers. Just avoid. And like, I used to have horrendous stomach issues, and I cut out loads of big food groups. But now I eat all the foods, but I just follow a basic principle of I eat mostly fresh fruit and vegetables and meat and whatever bought from our local farmers market, and I eat very, very few things out of packets now. Like, there's very few packets in our house. It's all fresh produce, and just put fresh food in it. We all intuitively know which foods are good for us and which aren't. Eat predominantly good foods without artificial shit in them, and do the things that just are more natural and bring you closer to nature, and just follow the simple things in life. Don't overcomplicate it. Life doesn't have to be so complicated.
Perfect. Alex Hyam, Exhale Coffee, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
And hope to see you soon.